Alright, what is up everybody? So, long time no see. I haven't had much time to make Warframe videos lately, but I've been really enjoying the Tennokai system. So I wanted to make a video going over the builds I've been using and some of the melee I've really enjoyed using that system with. So first I want to talk about kind of my thought process going into what makes a good Tennokai weapon. So weapons that can take advantage of both the light attack and heavy attack component that Tennokai brings. You can also factor in melee arcanes. There's some new melee mods, but I'm not really using those right now. So as far as weapons go, one of the biggest things for me was having a good heavy attack animation. So one of the issues with a lot of stances is their heavy attacks don't really hit a lot of things. So that's obviously bad. So you really want to have a heavy attack animation that is like a 360 around you, or some like wide slashing AoE, hitting a lot of targets. Or the other option is a ranged attack. So there's a few melee that have a ranged attack as their heavy attack, which is pretty cool. So the other thing is, I always think of the Fragger Prime, right? Like Fragger Prime can have a tremendous amount of damage, but it has no forced slash proc. So as soon as you hit something with armor, even with like a massive heavy attack, it basically does no damage. So you really want your heavy attacks to have a force slash proc. That's going to be like, the best bang for your buck. I guess the other thing to talk about would be the actual Tennokai mods themselves. So the two that I focus, the two that I think are the best option are, so this one is, it doesn't have any secondary benefit, and frankly, if you want more procs, Dreamer's Wrath is going to give you, almost more than you can use. So I don't think this one is worth using. Increasing status chance is, well, I just said that I'm focusing on weapons that have force slash procs, so this doesn't really matter. So this one doesn't really do anything. These are kind of like very basic. So I think the two real options are either Dreamer's Wrath, which increases opportunity chance and critical damage, or Opportunity's Reach. And the really important thing here is the extra melee range, which 3 more meters of range, and a lot of these, a few of these weapons are Incarnon weapons with extra range from that on top of primed reach. So yeah, you can have very long range heavy attacks, hitting a pretty big area, applying a huge slash proc, everything dies, you feel very happy. It's great. So in general, my rule of thumb has been, the better the weapon is at light attacking, the more I lean towards Opportunity's Reach. And the more the weapon relies on those heavy attack procs from Tennokai, the more I want Dreamer's Wrath. And so, that's kind of been my thought process. Now, as far as melee arcanes go, so these are all going to be melee influence builds. So when it comes to Tennokai, I really think there's only two options, because you have your the one arcane where your shields contribute to damage, but your shields can go down, and also it's just stacking additively with condition overload. It's so easy to prime enemies with status effects now. Like, just your Hound is going to be pooping out like 5 status effects on everything constantly. So it's really it's not, adding more additive damage on top of that is not super great. I think the best alternative to influence, I just think influence is really cool. I think it's a very interesting concept. The electricity procs are kind of giving you like free CC. It's a little bit of extra status priming, so it's like more damage through condition overload. Plus, your crit is so high with these weapons that your electricity procs are doing really, really strong damage on their own. So spreading those, we've kind of seen a trend lately with a few of like the contagious bond mod from companions where spreading status effects can be really powerful and almost like broken. I mean, they had to nerf that companion mod because companions were just like obliterating Steel Path by copying status effects. So so I think melee influence is very fun conceptually. I think the best alternative. So there's also the corrosive damage one, but if you're playing a Tennokai build, you want to be light attacking as much as possible. It's like a very melee focused build, right? So you want to be light attacking a lot to proc your heavy attacks, which means you're probably not spamming abilities. So it can be kind of annoying to keep that corrosive buff up. So I think probably the best frame if you want to use that one is Gauss. But like I said before, I'm focusing on weapons with force slash proc. So just adding a bunch of corrosive damage on top of that actually doesn't really do much. I think the best option is when you light attack, your next heavy attack has more crit chance. But with the setup I'm running, I already have 880 percent crit chance between these two when I heavy attack. So it's like, it's stacking additively with that basically. So it's not like, I mean, yes, it's pretty good. I personally like melee influence conceptually. Another thing is, I know that smite mods would improve this damage a lot. Smite mods actually are currently triple dipping with melee influence. I personally really, really, really hate smite mods. I hate having to switch them out every mission. I know that they're broken, but I just think that from a quality of life perspective, they are terrible. And I don't really do endurance runs anymore because, frankly, there's not really any reason to ever do endurance runs. There's no activity that promotes that. So I really don't find a need for these. If you want to use them, you can probably take out a crit mod or switch off of melee influence to melee animosity and take out electricity. So those are my thoughts on that. So all the builds I'll be showing are focused on melee influence style builds using one of those two Tennokai mods, and I wanted to go through some of the weapons that I think can really take advantage of those types of builds. So the first weapon we have here, to the surprise of literally no one, is the ceramic dagger Incarnon, which is an absolutely turbo busted weapon. So, pretty standard. So we have the increased damage. When your shields break, you get more damage, more range, more crit chance. So we're doing a heavy attack build. We have a ton of crit chance. This is pretty awesome. So one thing to note, so everybody knows the ceramic dagger throws out that the spectral dagger in front of you, right? So one thing to be aware of is your positioning with different weapons will change depending on their heavy attack animation. So ceramic dagger, it's like a frontal lunge with a short swipe back and forth, and then it's throwing a projectile. So in general, you're going to want to kind of like melee and almost like back yourself up a little bit or something, kind of strafe when you have like a group of enemies. So, and we'll see that here. Another thing, which I'll show this. I did not trigger it there. So let me get the Incarnon. I mean, this weapon is just so really. Oh my god, it's just so stupid. Yeah, I don't know. That's the ceramic dagger. I mean, this like this is a pretty obvious choice. Like you don't even really need to. I don't even really need to explain this one. It's such a busted weapon. So one thing I wanted to mention is Naramon, obviously very strong because they're running a very melee-focused build. So I will say that for a lot of these weapons, like whether it's an Incarnon weapon or whatever, they like really, because we're using this like, you want your combo counter as high as possible quickly. So don't forget that opening slam exists. So, performing a slam as operator switches to Warframe and grants double combo gain for 20 seconds. Now, this is a little awkward to activate sometimes, but let me just pull these enemies up. Also, like, if you're not using a Hound, they are just... I don't know if this is going to get nerfed, but they are pretty insane right now. This Prospectus mod, like look at all those status effects. You don't even need to use a like epitaph or something. You don't need to prime because your companion is just shooting out all sorts of status effects. Now I'm just gonna group enemies up a little bit. So it's a little weird to use this. So okay, of course, and oh my gosh. All right. Well, this is just embarrassing. All right. I don't know. Yeah. So I guess that's an argument to not use that. I don't really know why it's not working. Okay, whatever. Honestly, I don't know what the hell's happening. It usually works fine. But so you can. There we go. Holy bejesus! Finally. So you get this opening slam. I don't know why it was not working like at all with Ceramic Dagger there. When I was testing it, it worked much better, but Alright, so Ceramic Dagger, that's very obvious, right? So let's get to another very obvious one, which would be Praedos. Now, one thing you're going to see in common with a lot of these weapons that I'm showing is... actually, let me go to a different weapon really quick. So, with light attack builds, back in the day of no Exilus for melee, no Arcanes, you could have a bangin' light attack build, and you can still run this, with very little investment. Because melees have stances which give them more capacity, you could run, this is like a very typical like attack speed, range, blood rush, condition overload, weeping wounds, unranked viral mods so that you get the most slash possible. This is like very standard. You could replace these two with like spring-loaded blade and smite, but even then you'd probably only need like one more forma. So you could make like a pretty budget build for some melee. This is a Za, so this is like a Sepfon Za, but there's plenty of melee with a lot of slash that don't require a lot of investment. One downside of these Tennokai builds is you're basically running the most expensive heavy attack mods and all the expensive, and by expensive I mean high capacity, all the high capacity light attack mods in one build, and you're adding an Exilus slot on top. So you might have to dump a lot of forma into these weapons. There's also the Arcanes, which are a real pain to farm, or they can be. So yeah, that is one caveat with these. Also, a lot of these weapons are like, I guess, relatively end game-ish, like Ceramic Dagger and Praedos and stuff. So yeah, so that is one caveat. So let's move on with the Praedos. Also, not really a huge surprise. So you get more range and more attack speed for your Incarnon form. Now, you love attack speed with Tennokai. So I was testing these with like Gauss, and man, it just gets wild. So if you're running a really heavy attack speed frame with like Warcry or Gauss or Volt or whatever, Wisp maybe, you could consider dropping Dreamer's Wrath for Opportunity's Reach, because the more attack speed you have, the more procs you're going to get. So just hitting more things with this is going to be more valuable. So, all right, let's continue with the evolution. So attack speed, pretty nice. You have, for each, like I said, you want to get your combo count up quick, so you can use this to do that. There's no real like DPS options for this evolution, so I just went with parkour velocity because it's kind of nice. And then heavy attack wind-up speed, which brings me to another point of Organ Shatter versus Amalgam Organ Shatter. So, because Tennokai attacks are much, much, much faster than normal melee heavy attacks, you don't really need Amalgam Organ Shatter, especially on Praedos because it has that passive, or that evolution. However, there are some weapons that have very slow heavy attack animations where you might consider running Amalgam Organ Shatter. And I'll get to an example of that later. So this is the mod setup I have on the Praedos. Now, it's looking a little funky. Like, why am I running a partially ranked Shocking Touch here? So one thing to note with the Ceramic Dagger is it doesn't have slash. So I actually want to proc more electricity. Frankly, I really wish there was a primed Shocking Touch, because then I could, have electricity be the dominant status effect. Now, I guess in case anybody doesn't know, so you know how your weapon has a status chance. So when anytime you hit something with your weapon, it basically rolls a dice, and if it procs a status chance, that is one event. Then it picks which status effect to apply, and that is not completely random. It's actually weighted. So it's weighted by how the damage value for that particular damage type compared to the rest of the damage on the weapon. So for this particular weapon, the way that I have it modded, it has an equal chance to proc electricity or puncture, which puncture is actually not bad. Puncture is actually pretty good. And then it has a very low chance to proc impact. So you can use this to control what you are proccing more often. So that's why in the previous example with the Zaw, I had those unranked viral mods, because I wanted it to be proccing slash more than anything else. So in this case, this doesn't have slash. So I want the full, the maxed out electricity mod. Like I said, I wish there was a primed electricity mod, or I wish I had room to slot in another electricity mod to get me, over that, over puncture. Probably the only way to do that in this case would be a Riven, but I don't have a Riven for the Ceramic Dagger. So, moving back over to Praedos. So Praedos does have a absolute crap ton of slash. I want this weapon to be mostly proccing slash. So I'm running this downranked Shocking Touch. Now this is, this is going to be a much better light attack weapon than the Ceramic Dagger, but it's probably a little worse heavy attacks. So I'm running Opportunities Reach. I really like Gemini Cross because the neutral attack has that like spinning glaive attack, which has like a lot of hits, and it's pretty reliable at proccing Tennokai. And with Praedos, so Tonfas have there's like numerous weapons that have force slash procs on heavy attacks, like daggers, dual daggers, two-handed Nakanas, Tonfas, like scythes. Like there's a lot of weapons that have that. You can look that up on the wiki. That'll give you an idea of where to start if you want to try testing out weapons. Because Praedos has all this extra range, it hits a ginormous area. So I'm actually going to switch over to Gauss to make this a little easier. Man, Gauss Prime is amazing. I'm not going to use his speed buff because I don't want to, taint the results here. So I'm just going to use him to group enemies up. Okay. Alright, so let me get my Incarnon form active. Now these things are just going to die because I hit them one time. Now the thing to keep... Okay, I have to say, like, Tennokai is... It's just hilarious. Like, the amount of, like... I mean, like, yeah, they're just going to die anyway. So, Tennokai is really insane amounts of damage. So you don't really like need Tennokai. I think it's very fun, but these weapons are strong enough that like they're just gonna obliterate everything like normally. So like honestly, I'm a little worried these things are gonna die before I even get a attack off. Anyways, okay, let me do this a little differently. So let me now that I am stacked up on combo, let me just hit one thing. So, oh my goodness. Sometimes, okay, that actually brings me to another point. Sometimes you just get unlucky, and your Tennokai is not proccing. So, that's why part of my selection criteria was just like weapons that are kind of just good. Like, I think there's some weapons that are only good if you're getting Tennokai procs. However, I don't really think that those are very good to use because it's almost like, it brings me back to playing like a fire mage or frost mage and WoW when you're like fishing for procs and you're not getting anything and it feels terrible. You really want your weapons to just like feel good. Now, ceramic dagger and Praedos are very obvious, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows those weapons or assumes those weapons are going to be good for Tennokai. Now let's get into some of the like more surprising weapons. So when I was looking at like, okay, what weapons have force slash procs on heavy attacks, and I was like, machetes do. That's interesting. And then I started looking at the different heavy attack animations, and machetes have this really nice 360 AoE for their heavy attacks, and I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. So, let me just group things up over here. So hopefully this works. So ideally you would, yes, okay, it finally worked. So now I'm all stacked up, right? Let me get my combo going. They're all gonna die because this weapon is just a good weapon, it turns out. And I'm summoning in the hardest enemies I can in the Simulacrum. Unfortunately, they're, I wish I could bring in even higher level enemies. Okay, so here we go. Okay, you see that humongous area that I just hit with that heavy attack? So with this weapon, you want to be in the middle of enemies. With the Praedos and the ceramic dagger, because the ceramic dagger is throwing out projectiles, Praedos is hitting like an arc in front of you. You kind of want to be like in front of the enemies you're trying to hit. This weapon, you want to be in the middle because it's a 360 AoE. There's actually a couple other weapons I found, and so this is a very similar build. So I'm not even really going to look at the builds. This one, I actually was messing around with more electricity. You could also run a downranked mod if you want more slash. Why did I pick this particular machete? Because it had the most base crit. That's literally it. So I'm not going to go over the build. I'm not going to belabor that point. But, so another weapon that has a 3.6, and you can see the form accounts on these are a little high, so I'm sorry about that. But so this weapon, apparently a lot of people hate this weapon, and I will say the stance isn't like the best, especially the neutral combo and the forward block combo, but the forward combo is fine in my opinion. This is like decent. It's not, doesn't really break your stride too much. It has nice sweeping attacks. Now let's see what the heavy attack for this weapon looks like. Oh, that's also a very nice, humongous AoE. So let me pull these enemies in. Let me just, jump up, get my extra combo counter going here. Okay, and then I'm gonna heavy attack, and they all get a huge slash proc, and they're all dead. So, or they're mostly dead. So this weapon is also pretty surprisingly good. I wanted to use this weapon a lot when it came out, but I just didn't really, there wasn't really a build that like jived with me. But I actually think it's a very fun Tennokai weapon. So here I'm running Dreamer's Wrath, very similar. So this one I am running Amalgam Organ Shatter because it's a particularly slow animation. Also using a downranked Shocking Touch. Also, like in the past, so if you don't have Prime Fury, I know that that's a login reward, so not everybody has that. You can definitely just use Quickening. If you have Prime Fury, it's worth it for the extra 15% attack speed to just dump another Forma and use that. Because Tennokai scales so well with attack speed. So this weapon is also very fun. Has 4 slash procs, nice 360 AoE. So this next weapon is actually my personal favorite, and it also has a like 360 AoE. So I have been absolutely adoring this weapon ever since I tried it with Tennokai. So this is Sun and Moon. So once again, very similar story to the previous weapons. Heavy slash, very good weapon on its own. Has like pretty running a downranked electricity mod, and it has a pretty nice AoE like slashing animation. So let's go check this out. So let me group these things together, go into Naramon, slam down. So I'm already maxed out. So I'm gonna try and get a Tennokai proc off of this guy. Of course I won't. And these things are already dead because of my pet. So let me get a new group of enemies. And like I said, these weapons are kind of just, pretty insane. Okay. Alright, there we go. See, nice big procs. Things around me are dying. Now, one thing to know, and this is like a little weird. So if you have a Tennokai proc, it will work on slam attacks. It will not work on sliding heavy attacks. So you see how even though I had a Tennokai proc, my combo multiplier still got consumed. So do not do sliding heavy attacks. You will destroy your combo meter. Now you can always build it back up. It's not a huge deal, but it is a little annoying. So Sun and Moon have been my personal favorite. I just love the way they look. I think they're just super awesome weapons. Another weapon I've always really liked, and so I have a Riven for this. That's why there's so much Forma, so don't be too scared. I've always loved the Quassus. And so I'm going to show, so this is like, so the other builds were pretty like, optimized. This is like, outside of one more rank on melee influence, this is about as good as I could make a Tennokai build. So this has probably the best stats I would want for this build. It has electricity, which I would want anyways, and it has crit chance. So this build has well over 1,000 crit, like almost 1,200 crit, 1,200% more crit on your heavy attacks on a weapon that already has a base 30% crit chance. That's a lot of crit. So you're hitting like some pretty insane numbers here. Now I am running Dreamer's Wrath because you have so much crit, you want that extra crit damage, and this weapon has ranged heavy attacks. So you want more, you want the extra opportunity chance. You don't really care about the range from the opportunity or the range Tennokai mod. So I'm just gonna do this so I group them up. I'm gonna do the Naramon thing. Alright, I'm already maxed out. Look at that. They're probably already gonna die. I'm trying, okay, damn it. Okay, alright, well, okay, I gotta do that again because weapon's too strong, I guess. Too much crit chance. Too much crit chance. The Berenstein Bears and too much crit chance. So I'm trying to only hit one of these. Okay, there we go. So, like, it didn't even, like, it just one-shot them. And then your pet, so I'll cover that in a second. So your pet is, so only 2 of the projectiles hit that thing, and it was, ticking 50k status or slash ticks. So yeah, so that's like kind of the most end game scenario. This is obviously you can just run a normal electricity mod in that slot, and it's also very good. So companion, because I've mentioned the companion a little bit. So there was like I forget if it was No Sympathy or Tactical Potato, like one of the other pretty good Warframe content creators. Mentioned how good the hounds were and how well they can spread status effects. So I'm just going to look at the weapon really quick. So I just have Viral, Heat, and one of the new Radiation mods on their weapon. Nothing else. It doesn't need anything else. And hounds have this synergized prospectus mod, or precept. So it shoots out this spark. And earlier I was like, wow, look at all those status effects. It's priming things. So this is insane. This thing is absolutely nuts. So you basically run this, you run Manifold Bond, because when you kill enemies with status effects, which with these builds, everything is going to have a load of status effects, you're reducing your companion cooldowns. So your hound is going to be spamming this ability all over the place. And then on top of that, when your companion kills an enemy with a status effect, part of that status effect gets spread to other enemies, and they had to put this stack cap on it because it was literally crashing the game. Your companions were spreading so many status effects. So now you might be like, oh, well, your companion can't really kill like a level 200 Steel Path Heavy Gunner. It doesn't matter. If your companion could kill a butcher with no armor, which, you run like Momentous Bond for more damage for your pet, and, this does pretty good damage. It applies a lot of status effects. So, like, even if your pet kills just like some dinky little butcher enemy with no armor, it's still going to spread all those status effects. So that means your huge electricity procs from your melee and your slash procs from your melee. Because one thing to remember is melee influence only works on the elemental status effects. So that is primarily spreading the electricity damage. It is not spreading the slash damage. However, Contagious Bond can spread your slash damage. So that's why, like, sometimes when I would attack those enemies, they just kind of all instantly died, right? And that happens all the time in missions. Like, you like melee stuff one time, and your status effects spread, and like everything around you is just dead. You're like a tactical nuke Saren just walking around. So let me get to a couple. So one thing I will mention is scythes. So I actually think one-handed scythes are pretty decent. The only thing I don't like about them is they have a pretty low attack speed. So this is kind of like my honorable mentions section. So they do actually have a pretty decent heavy attack animation. Their attacks in either of their stances are pretty decent, pretty wide sweeping attacks. Now the Quassus has a low attack speed, but the Quassus has a ranged heavy attack. So it kind of makes up for that. Pretty much all of this one-handed sides that have good crit, so like Reaper Prime and Hate, and like the Grigori Prime or Tenet Grigori or whatever it's called, have pretty low attack speeds. So that's why they weren't like my favorite weapons to use for Tennokai. A couple of the other honorable mentions, so the two other ones I tried that were actually pretty good, but didn't really quite work out, was Fang Prime. So dual daggers actually have forced slash procs on their heavy attacks, and the forward combo is actually really nice for Gnashing Pyara. It's like these nice wide swinging attacks, pretty fast. Here's the problem. Yeah, you're just hitting that little tiny area right there with your heavy attacks. So very, very poor range. That was the biggest factor with Fang Prime. And with the next one, we'll also see a similar story, Destreza Prime, which once again, fantastic weapon. It's a rapier, so they have forced slash procs on heavies. Problem is, with the heavy attack, once again, very small area you're hitting. So that was the biggest problem with those weapons. Otherwise, they are very fun weapons to use with Tennokai. Now, the last weapons I wanted to show off, but I don't even have a melee equipped. Or do I? So, as far as I know, now I would love if people correct me if I'm wrong. Every time I've tried this, it's always bugged. But Garuda's talons have notoriously been bugged out with Blood Rush, so a lot of times that doesn't work. So you can see, like, this should be a fully ranked Toxin mod. I just didn't want to spend the extra forma. I've literally formaed like a million things this week testing this out, so I've spent like an ungodly amount of plat on forma, but all in the name of science. So Garuda's talons are actually really fun with Tennokai. So you might have been wondering why I hadn't mentioned any claws yet, because claws also have forced heavy attack or force slash procs on heavy attacks, and that's why I was saving it for Garuda. So her claws do very, very respectable damage. they're just good weapons, and this follows the same trend, right? They're good weapons on their own, and when you get a Tennokai proc, whatever you hit with it is just dead. They have good range. Yeah, so anything you do hit with your Tennokai attack is just dead. And yeah, so I actually think that they're very fun. I think I personally think Garuda's a pretty strong frame, anyways. So it just adds a little bit of extra flair to her. The other frame I wanted to cover is Valkyr. So I know there's a lot of Valkyr haters out there. A lot of people think Valkyr is a bad frame. Okay? I know that. I know a lot of people don't like Valkyr. So, let's see here. Let us get these enemies grouped up a little bit. So, I'm just going to try and get my combo counter up. Okay. Alright, 5x. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now keep in mind, so these are... I didn't have a Tennokai proc, I'm stupid. Anyways, these are 195 corrupted heavy gunners. Pretty, high amount of armor. Alright? So that's usually Valkyr's problem, because she does not have forced procs on her heavy attacks. So just bear with me here as I group things up a little bit. Okay, so let me get a Tennokai. Alright. So that did pretty solid damage. Almost one-shot them. Now, okay, that dude's almost dead. Alright, so now we have our combo count build up. And we can move to the, the Valkyr end game here. Alright, so everything's grouped up. Dang it, I didn't even, okay, you know what? I can't do that. It's too strong. It's too strong. Now, I am not running any armor stripping with this, right? These are Steel Path 195 heavy gunners, right? Oh my god, please. Please give me a Tennokai proc. Oh my god. Alright. See, sometimes you just get unlucky. That's just the way it is. So, alright. Oh my goodness. Let's try this again for the umpteenth time. Okay. Please, please give me a Tennokai proc. Okay, finally. And it went away. Alright. See, it's just too much damage. She's too strong. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is show off a 12x Tennokai attack with Wrathful Advance, but it's not cooperating with me at the moment. So this is the unfortunate part of Tennokai. Sometimes you do just get unlucky. So, okay, I don't know if you saw that, but it just one-shot that 195 heavy gunner. So that's the moral of the story here. So she also has, really you should be using Warcry because, it is, much more attack speed. But I think that she is really fun with Tennokai. I think that it is like a real blast to play her. One thing, and so this is actually where the sliding thing comes in. So you don't want to do sliding heavy attacks. Because like I said before, it doesn't they don't actually really work with Tennokai. So you can do you can do this kind of a sliding heavy attack with Valkyr, but it doesn't really work with Tennokai, unfortunately. There are the other melee exalted frames like Xcal or Baruch, and you can throw. I mean, why not? Right? I don't have it on there right now, but you can just throw it on there if you want. I mean, I already have like a trillion forma on Baruch, so what's another forma or two? So yeah, so you can put Tennokai on all the melee exalted frames, and it's really fun. So I think that's at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Oh, I will also one last shout out to the Pennant. So two-handed Nakanas. I mean, the Pennant's a beast, and it's very well suited to this because its passive gives it a bunch of extra attack speed. My problem with Pennant is I hate Wise Razor. I mean, two-handed Nakanas are fine for heavy attacking, but light attacking with a two-handed Nakana is just pain. It is so bad. So yeah, I just avoid that because it's just really bad. So so yeah. So those are the weapons that I've really enjoyed. Overall, I think it's awesome. I'm really glad they're trying new things, innovating on existing systems. Between the companion rework and these new melee options, like there's so many fun builds you can make. So huge props to the Warframe team. I think Rebecca and the whole team are just absolutely killing it. So I'm going to get out my favorite. So this has been my go-to lately. The past little while here is Gauss and the Sun and Moon are just, oh man, it's so much fun. Such a fun time, especially with Mach Rush, like slamming into stuff, grouping enemies up, and then just Tennokai heavy attacking them. I'll say so some frames that work well with this are obviously any of the attack speed frames. So Gauss, Volt, Wisp, Valkyr, or just subsuming Warcry, whatever. Those all work really well. Also, any frames that have grouping abilities, so pull, whatever, airburst, larva, ensnare, some of the augments that do it, like Mach Rush. There's also Tidal Surge for Hydroid. So there's a whole, lot of options. But frankly, Hydroid doesn't even really need weapons at this point. So anything that groups enemies up will, do a nice job. I'm interested to see with the next update, since they talked about Inaros and they talked about finishers a little bit in the last dev stream. I'm wondering if we might get some. I feel like melee are in a really good place right now in terms of light attack builds are good. There's a lot of options there. Heavy attack builds are good. There's options there. There's these Tennokai builds, which are kind of a mix between the two. Finishers are kind of the forgotten child of melee. Outside of maybe some really specific Ash builds or something, or using Marked for Death with a Rapier, because Rapier finishers have force slash procs. They're just not used at all. Nobody really uses finishers. I use Parazon finishers to proc my Parazon mods, but I never use normal finishers. It's just not a thing. So yeah, I'm curious to see if we might get some love for finishers in the future. That would be pretty cool. Maybe with the Inaros rework, we'll see something like that. So let me know, have you been trying out Tennokai? Have you been messing around with the melee arcanes? What are your favorite weapons? I'd say my top two have probably been Slaytra and Sun and Moon, which was a little surprising that I enjoyed those weapons so much. So props to the team for making some cool new features that let us explore alternative weapon options. So hope everybody has a good day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around. Thank you.